Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Wookieecast. Today we're here with Amy Ratcliffe, the author of several Star Wars reference books and other fun things. Thank you so much for sitting down with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to get into Star Wars Women of the Galaxy updated and expanded, but it's kind of fun, like full circle, because that was the first Star Wars book I ever worked on, or my first book, period. So that was in 2018, and it is wild how many books I have done since then. I feel very lucky.
But you probably started with Star Wars as just a fan, so what was your first film that you remember seeing in theaters?
Yeah, so the first one I remembered seeing, or that I did see, period, was when they were re-released as special editions. So it was A New Hope in 1997. Though I actually did experience Star Wars for the first time on Star Tours during a family trip to Disneyland in 1991. But I'd never seen Star Wars, so I had no context for what it was about. Um, Except that I'm like, oh, my cousin wants to go on this ride. Sure. And yeah, so it was the special editions, and then I saw the prequels when those came out, but then I really fell in love with Star Wars because of Star Wars The Clone Wars. And that kind of, I don't know if you've ever had those things where you're like, get it, I like this, it's cool, but then you like see another piece of the story and you're like, oh, like it just unlocks like a different layer of curiosity and appreciation. So that's really what happened with me with Clone Wars.
So, for the first Women of the Galaxy, that's interesting that it was your first book. So, how was working on that like? Perhaps a bit new in that case.
Surreal. That was, at that time, I'd been doing some work for StarWars.com, the blog, and Star Wars Insider magazine, and other entertainment reporting, right? But my dream was not just to write a book, yes, but specifically to write. I'm like, I really want to write a Star Wars book. And when the email came from my editor, who would be my editor, to be like, "Are you interested?" I was just like, is this real? This is a prank. Like, of course, like, why wouldn't I be interested? And I had to do like a writing test, basically. Like Lucasfilm had given him my name, but we hadn't, he wasn't really familiar super with my, or like super familiar with my work. So I wrote a couple of test entries. I think one of them was probably for Leia. And then we were off and running. And as I've learned in the Star Wars books since, like it is like a slow process until it isn't. and, and then you have to like hurry up. So it was kind of the slow buildup of figuring out the characters, working with Story Group and Lucasfilm Publishing to be like, who are we going to feature? And then who gets how many pages, basically. Because you have characters like Leia, who have done a lot in the Star Wars universe, or that we've seen a lot of what they've done. And then characters like um, Aunt Beru, who we've seen more of her now. In fact, I got to update her entry for the new book, but back then it was like, you want me to write how many words on Aunt Beru? um, so it was kind of sorting those tiers, and then also being very aware, like, I'm like, to include publishing and comics characters and video game characters. So it was daunting, but I feel like my editor Steve is like was a great first editor to work with. I worked with him, I don't know, four more times. What's math? Three more times since then in different projects, and he was really patient. And it was cool to like write a book that way when you have to, like, I learned from the beginning like what the process is like when it's not just your editor, right? But then they're sending it off to Lucasfilm and multiple people there look at it, and there's just a process and time. And sometimes you'll be like, I am so done with this project. And then 2 months later, they're like, oh, they just got to this one part. Can you please? I'm like, oh, I'm being haunted.
That's true. I've heard the deadlines can be a bit brutal, so I guess it's a bit fast and all at once. But it'd be interesting to get into the character selection process. Did you have any input in any characters that you really wanted to include that you were able to suggest?
Yes and no. Um, by the time they came to me, the project had been like developing Women of the Galaxy for a little while. They approached me in 20, what is time? It published in 2018. I think I was approached in 2017. That sounds right. And they had a pretty good list. But there was definitely room for kind of the bigger characters were set, but to have the smaller one-page characters. And one I really pushed for because there was a certain, I think there was like, we had obviously characters that didn't make it. So there was a literal like short list of like, oh, who can we put in? And there was a collection of short stories that had just come out connected to Last Jedi called I think Tales of Canto Bight.
Yeah.
And yeah, and there was a character in Mira Grant's story called Durla Pitus, and she is basically like a space sommelier who like really knew beverages and like this like kick butt businesswoman. And I just love that story. Like something about it just, I think it's like meeting those kind of more everyday characters in Star Wars. Like I really love that. So I was like, Durla Pitus. And they're like, yeah, that's the one you really want to fight for. I'm like, that is the hill I am dying on if I have so it was really fun. So like it just be like, this is the character I'm committed to having in. But then it was like a bummer to have other ones. Oh, she's not just Poe Dameron's mother. She obviously does many other things. She's a pilot, but I'm spacing on her name right
Shara
now.
Bay, I'm pretty sure.
Shara Bay, yes, thank you. Um, did not, like make it in. And that was when I'm like, but guys, but you have the pages you have and you can't put everyone in or it would be uh more of a like it would be giant.
I guess that kind of leads into the next question. With the new one, you probably were involved a bit more from the start of the project because it's an updated edition. With selecting the characters that would appear in this new edition, what was that like?
Yeah, exactly. I was way more involved to the point where it was kind of daunting. And the fun part of it was it started with me because my editor hasn't, I feel like since this book came out in 2018, there has been like a million hours of Star Wars content between the TV series and all the High Republic. And my editor hadn't necessarily, like unlike me, Star Wars is not his personality. So he hadn't kept up with all of it. So I was able to really like be like, okay, from Andor, we should include these characters from Ahsoka, from the High Republic. And I think he asked, I don't remember the exact number he asked for, but I gave him way more because I knew he would take that list to Lucasfilm and they could help be like the voice of reason, so to speak, or the guiding voice. And so that was exciting to revisit, Disney Plus like hadn't even happened by the time this book came out last, which is bananas to think about.
Might have
And
been a bit easier to research this time around.
exactly, oh boy, the joy of being able to just pull up an episode on my laptop and revisit a scene for both this book and the especially I worked on the Star Wars encyclopedia. And I'm like, oh, Disney Plus, you have made my life so much easier. So yeah, I got to have a lot of input. And then of course there's always the like when you do stuff like this, it's like where do you draw the line of new stuff, right? So we were able to get acolyte characters in. I think K-Vess was kind of like a last minute, oh, we should put, I'm like, absolutely, we should put K-Vess in, but the video game had not been out like super long, and I take a very long time to get through video games. So I had to be like, please tell me some information. um, but I think we had to like cut it off. Like we're like, but Skeleton Crew, and they're like,
It's
that's
too
too late, I
far
think.
in publishing,
Yeah.
yeah.
So which then I watched Skeleton Crew and was just like, oh, I wish we could have put Fern and KB in here. But yeah, you have to draw the line.
Did you have any favorite entries that you were able to update that were existing entries that kind of got more content later on?
Oh, so many, but I think it was Baru Lars because in 2018 I had information from the film A New Hope, deleted scenes, and kind of the however you want to classify the canonical level of from a certain point of view for A New Hope, those stories. But then we got Obi-Wan. And from Obi-Wan Kenobi, like we saw Beru, so much more of her. We saw her be this like fierce protector of their home and like sassed Owen and like just more, we got to see her be more of a boss in addition to like the nurturing side of her we saw in A New Hope. So revisiting some of those moments in Obi-Wan Kenobi to update Beru's entry was really satisfying. I'm like, yeah, you were a character who deserved like more of your story than being known mostly as being the woman who makes blue milk and calls Luke's name in a particular way. Um, so that was exciting to update.
Something lovely about these books is that they feature so much beautiful artwork from a lot of just amazing illustrators. Did you have any particular favorites that you loved, either from the first edition or the next edition?
All of them? No. One of my favorite things about the first edition, and I don't know if they'll do an updated one, but Chronicle Books made like a postcard box of 100 postcards that featured the art. And that was in I think that came out maybe in 2018 or 2019, and I've been intending since then to like make a beautiful collage of some kind or frame some of them, and um that ambition has not panned out. But I like to go through because I just feel like the art makes it such a treasure. And gosh, in the new book, there's a beautiful new Ray piece, but I know one of my oh no, I love them all. I'm just looking at the book now to be like, oh yeah, and it was really cool, especially to see different takes on, like or the first time takes on characters like Nora Wexley, who to that point had not been illustrated anywhere yet. So, or like teenage Phasma. So I'm gonna cop out. I can't pick a favorite. Yep.
Do you
It's
have your
all
copy yet
beautiful.
then, if you're looking at it?
Yes, that's exactly yes. I was just like, let me refresh my memory. And I love the new cover. I love
Do love it.
the 2018 copy or edition has Ray on it, obviously, and that makes sense. But Ahsoka's always been my favorite. And in 2018, I was like, Ahsoka on the cover, and they're like, no, people don't know who Ahsoka is. And I'm like, look how times have changed. And the new Ray art on the back, which is also
It's beautiful. And it's a lot
beautiful.
thicker than the first one as well, just from what I'm looking at. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it added. That's why we had to like stop because I'm like, I think my editor was like, we have already had how many pages now? So, but that was a moment of joy where I'm like, Ahsoka looks like she's more of a household name now. So they're like,
For
yeah, we can
sure.
put
We
her on the
have the second
cover.
season coming out as well, eventually.
Exactly. So
So,
someday.
um, so with Women of the Galaxy, you've also been working on a lot of other Star Wars projects recently. So were there any elements of the work that perhaps research that you were doing for the encyclopedia that kind of blurred over into, oh, I got inspired about this character, so I included it in the Women of the Galaxy edition?
Yes, 100%. A couple of ways. So for the Star Wars Encyclopedia, I did a lot of the Andor entries and a lot of the Ahsoka entries. And again, Disney Plus, like saving my skin because when you have those characters who are only on screen for a little while, like you're freeze framing and being like, what is your expression here? Like what kind of clothes, like what is literally any fact I can extract from this moment? And in doing that, like I just really like got more appreciation for, I mean, Andor is objectively the best. So I didn't need to like be like, well, but there was like a moment where I think, Marva was on the cutting block for I had put her on the list and like they were like, oh, maybe not Marva. And I'm like, no, Marva Andor stays. I, loved that when I watched the series. And then when I went back to research, she's just like so, and her speech at the end of her funeral, like, I think that's a fascinating character. And also, we don't always see like a lot of women of that age in Star Wars as part of the story. So I'm trying to get to the page because I'll show the parts. Um, so I was like, we have to include Marva. So that one was a must have. And then now it is this thing too. I'm like going back. I'm like, I know I wrote an entry for the three. I don't know if they made it though. Oh, the mothers from Ahsoka as a trio,
Oh,
right?
yeah,
The
the
Great
Great
Mothers.
Mothers.
And I'm not remembering if it made it in, but I definitely pushed for it. It's so funny, like how well, look, I'm a forgetful person anyway. But it is funny how quickly your brain's like, I don't know, I'm done with that. I don't think they made it in. But that was one I was like, what? But you have to make decisions, unfortunately. But Peli Motto got in, which I thought was really fun because I think she's
Yeah, and the pit droids probably in the background. That would be funny if always with the pit droids.
I kind of think so, actually. she cracks me up, and that's just another like what a quirky type of character in Star Wars. Yes, they're absolutely Petroids. I won't show that one. But I was like, I think there are. Uh, and it was fun. Like, what really helped from the encyclopedia research is, especially with Ahsoka, like I took notes as those aired because I was writing the encyclopedia. I was making suggestions and then writing them week by week. And I would take note of a lot of quotes because every character has a quote. And when you have that down and you just have to go back to the episode to like get the words correct, like that's so much easier than trying to be like, I don't know what Hera said in that episode. Probably something inspiring. But that was helpful too.
So recently you've published your first, I think it was first novel that's more of prose rather than reference book material. So what are some of the differences that you find in the processes between doing reference material and more story-like prose?
Oh wow. It was a was like learning how to write a book all over again. Like everything I knew about publishing like didn't count is what it felt like, or writing. And previous to this, my only published fiction was a short story, and from a certain point of view, The Empire Strikes Back. And that's what really, when Random House World asked me to do that, I was like, I usually only write nonfiction in Star Wars. They're like, yeah, but like basically it was like we believe in you. And I'm like, okay. And I that was intimidating to write fiction in Star Wars, but then it was fun. But in that too, like I had the guidelines, right? My story was in this very specific moment in the Battle of Hoth. And when I went back and rewatched the Battle of Hoth, like for the whatever, like the who knows how many time, it's just like when you go back, you're like, oh, this is such a short part of the movie. And in my head, like it's so much longer. But when you're trying to fit a story between, so
And make sure it doesn't
anyway,
conflict anything.
yeah, exactly. Then it's like, oh, this is actually just like a tiny bit of The Empire Strikes Back, and you have to fit a story in. And but it was really fun. And I'm like, oh, making things up, pretty cool actually. And that made me want to pursue the idea of writing a whole novel in my own world. So I love theme parks. I love romances, and I was at a press event at Universal Islands of Adventure for a ride called Velocicoaster, which is a terrifying Jurassic World themed ride. I'm not a roller coaster person, but I went on it because I was a press preview, and I was like, oh, I must do my job. It's ridiculous, but that inspired the idea of for that book, and it was exciting to come up with my own world and like my own characters, but then at the same time, you're like, you have so much freedom. You're like, oh, like
The Lucasfilm
I am
review.
the yeah,
You can just
like
do
I am the
whatever.
person. And yeah, it's like that. Oh, I can do whatever. And it's like, oh wait, I don't. I am the person who has to give myself guardrails, or my editor eventually. And it was fun, but it's definitely, to that point, I think Women of the Galaxy is probably the longest book I've written, and that's probably the neighborhood of 20 some thousand words. I don't remember. It might be way more than that. But it certainly wasn't almost 90,000 words. Which is what my novel ended up being. And there's a point where you're just like we're writing, and I'm like, all right, we must be almost done. And you look at the word count, and you're like, oh, I am not almost done. And that was the hard part for me when I got notes back from my editor. I think I turned it in around 74,000 words, and it got up to 88,000. So it was definitely, I had to add more because my tendency was just to be like, and then things happened. And she's like, yes, but what things happened? And I was like, oh, you noticed that. Okay. So it was a learning curve, but it was fun ultimately.
Speaking of word counts, I heard from, I'm not exactly sure which encyclopedia interview it was that we did, but that there was a word count tracker amongst you all that you kind of kept track of while you're doing it. Do you remember who came out on top? Even if by a little
That's a
bit.
great question. That's a great question. And I don't, because we all had a pretty even word count, except maybe for the folks who came in like later in the project. But what that was great for, and what the other author may have talked about, was like it was inspiration. But I'm writing by myself. I am accountable to myself, and I keep a word tracker. Like I keep one for myself so I can see how many words I write in a day. Sometimes I use that for motivation. Far too often I use it to beat myself up, instead of like, oh, you didn't do what you. I'm working on that. But with that one, when there were so many of us, and you didn't want to like fall behind, and you would look at that and you'd be like, oh, Dan Zaire has how many words today? Like, what did he do? And then you're like, I gotta catch up, or whoever it was. And it was a good, I don't know if it was intended. I think it was, Matt, the editor's way of just like keeping
It's a
track of
little fun
everything and
game.
being fair. But it ended up being, yeah, a fun game. I was like, how can I do this? I kind of adapted that with Thrill Ride, which is my book that or the writing that I'm doing now. I'm the only one writing it, but I'm in a Discord with other writers and we'll do sprints together. And there's this like little bot in Discord that will do your word count. So I'm like, okay, someone else has seen it at least. It's like an accountability that I've learned I kind of need. Otherwise, I will procrastinate to an embarrassing degree.
Wikipedians can often relate. It's like filling out a page. Oh no, you said you'd do this yesterday. I remember. We keep each other on our toes. It's very fun.
In line. That's good. I don't know if
Yeah,
you
because
all
you
do
make
this
progress that
ever,
way.
like, but I'll do like I did say yesterday, but did you know I said yesterday in Pacific time zone and maybe or like so that's how sometimes I will rationalize to myself. I'm like, well, um, anyways, it's good to have other people keep you on track.
Circling back to something you mentioned about the from a certain point of view story, even though it was such a short blip, you did have the opportunity to introduce two new characters. It was Corwi and how do I pronounce this? Laseo? I was curious if you remember how you came up with those names because they're very unique.
Yeah, I do. So Corey, his last name is Selgroth, and the last name is mostly it's based on like a mix up of my sister's married name. And she's not super into Star Wars, but her brother-in-law and his family are, and they were like, "Oh my gosh!" So that was really fun. And then the other one is definitely based on a friend of mine's name, and that is for him to know. But I'm like, look, you're in Star Wars, and that's kind of like it's two things, right? One, I'm lazy about coming up with names. It's hard. It's fun, but sometimes it's actually more easy in Star Wars world. Like if it's like an everyday, like in my contemporary romance, I'm just like, I don't know. Fantasy names are fun. Like coming up with the name Charlotte is not as exciting for me. Um, so Star Wars is easier, but it's fun to like shout out your friends that way because one's friend of mine, Jody Hauser, who has worked on a lot of Star Wars comics, named a Togruta, like the last name was basically Ratcliffe, or very obvious, like very close to Lemma, and that just it makes you feel like yeah, I'm a Star Wars. Um, so it's like a silly, like nice thing to do.
Yeah, there's a comic character named after Alyssa Wong in the recent High Republic comics. So I guess it happens a lot. It's kind of like
Yes, people sneak in friends and family a lot.
um kind of to round things out, I had one question about the Galaxy's Edge art book actually, because that is a different type of reference material entirely. What's the process for that?
Oh boy, doing the art of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge was like two of my biggest fandoms are Star Wars and Disney parks. And like particularly in Disney parks, like Imagineering. Like I'm such a Walt Disney Imagineering fangirl. So getting to do that book, first of all, was just like what a nerd out process. And kind of the cool part of that process is, I worked on that during the pandemic. My editor who was on that book hadn't been to Galaxy's Edge and could not go because the park was closed. And I had spent a lot of time in Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland to that point. So I was able to kind of write the outline and really like kind of give my editor like not like a formal presentation, but we just had a call where I'm like, let me tell you, Eric, all about Galaxy's Edge. So you will take feel like you've been there. Close your eyes. I'll paint a picture. And so it was that. It was getting to look through Imagineering and Lucasfilm's like massive collection of sketches, so much more that even made it in the book and kind of highlighting which ones I thought would be like complement um the writing and the interviews, and then the interviews were a big part of it. And it was just let me make a wish list. And because I am an Imagineering fangirl, like I had a pretty good and I was also working at Disney at the time. And I had a list, kind of had an idea of like, oh, all these people, and the publicist helped me add some, and then got people from basically anyone who would talk to me. about their work on Galaxy's Edge. I love to be armed with like as much information as I can be. And my favorite thing about those interviews is, I was doing those in 2020, I guess, and people had done their work on Galaxy's Edge, like some of them in 20, I don't know, 15, 16, maybe I'm going too far back, but it had been years. Their memories were so sharp that if I could pull up an image, I would have images that I was going to use, and I'd pull up screen share and just kind of be like, what do you remember about this? Right. And they would just be like, oh, on this day, I was talking with Doug Chang about XYZ. And I'm like, well, I guess if I was talking to Doug Chang about anything, I would remember it too. But they remembered and they were still so excited about having, like, they were all like super fans and so excited about getting the chance to like contribute to the Star Wars universe. So it was a lot of interviews, a lot of transcribing, and then like putting it together like a puzzle in a way that was super, super satisfying.
It's just a really unique type of reference book. It's not like researching and then prosifying. It's definitely a lot of like more work, like legwork, I suppose. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, exactly. It was a lot of hours of interviews and it was really fun.
Um, to round out with the updated version of Women of the Galaxy coming out, what would you say to readers that might inspire them to pick up a copy or just inspire them about women in Star Wars in general?
Yeah, if you have the 2018 version, we have the 75 characters. The updated has over 100, and I think that says a lot about how much has been added to the Star Wars galaxy since 2018. And of course, like the first edition, it's from the TV series. It's from the films. Rise of Skywalker like didn't make it in the first edition, and it has comics, the High Republic. If you're a High Republic fan, there's art and characters that will make you happy. So I think there's a little for everyone. And what I said about the 2018 edition, which holds true with this one, you don't have to read a word. Like, honestly, if you don't want to, I'm not offended if you buy this just as an art book to flip through, because it's unique. If it's artists bringing their own style to Star Wars, so it's not like every other image of Leia that you've seen before. And then it's like new takes on characters like, Shinhati or Peli or Marva, like Vix, like characters that have not been super illustrated on merchandise out in the world yet. So come for the art, stay for the writing. Um, if you don't read the writing, again, I am not offended. And yeah, I hope you really like it and find a character that um, inspires you in some way, because that's the joy of writing this book. This is Kat Ahsoka, by the way. Um,
I love
she loves
cats. I
interviews.
have
I
several
love
as well.
cats. I have four. They're the best. Um, but yeah, I think it's remarkable to go through, and even characters like Dedra Mira, right, who is objectively awful, but to like look for traits. I'm like, well, you're super ambitious, and I do admire that. And you're like making your way in this very male and like imperial world and like outshining them all. Um, so yeah, I think it's fun. Just like I hope you find characters that you relate to and that inspire you to take some action in your own life.
If people would like to keep up with you and your future works, what social media platforms can they find you on?
Yeah, these days I'm pretty much only on Instagram. I post announcements on Twitter, but I'm on, or X, I'm on those, both of those as Amy_geek. And then I have a newsletter that's amyratcliffe.substack.com that I send once a month. And you can keep up with Star Wars stuff there. And my contemporary romance set in a theme park called Thrill Ride is out now. I think that's everywhere I'm active. That sounds right.
Thank you so much for sitting down with us today. Wookieepedia appreciates all that you, the Star Wars creators, do.
Oh my gosh, thank you, because the number of times I reference Wikipedia to be like, oh, that happened in that episode. That's what I need to go look at. Like, y'all do like the work of the gods. So thank you.